The bad news or the bad news?
We don't want any bad news.
He just came to see me to tell me that he's not coming back. Ever.
What really happened to Richard Rawlings? For years, fans saw him as unstoppable, the man who could take any rusted wreck and turn it into gold while living life in the fast lane from Gas Monkey Garage to Fast and Loud. But behind the fame, the cars, and the cameras, there's a mystery people have been talking about, and the truth isn't as shiny as the cars he builds. Today, we're digging deep into the Richard Rawlings Mystery, and what we found may surprise you. The rise of Richard Rawlings. When you hear the name Richard Rawlings, one thing immediately comes to mind: cars. Not just any cars, but the kind that roar down the street, grab attention, and make people turn their heads. Fast cars, loud cars, custom rides that look like they came straight out of a dream. But here's the thing. Before Richard became the face of Gas Monkey Garage and the hit show Fast and Loud, he wasn't a TV star. He wasn't a millionaire businessman. He was just a Texas kid with oil on his hands, a head full of dreams, and the determination to turn a simple hobby into a global brand. Richard Rawlings was born in 1969 in Fort Worth, Texas. From the very beginning, his world was filled with the sound of rumbling engines and the smell of motor oil. His biggest influence? His father. His dad wasn't rich. In fact, he worked 2, sometimes even 3 jobs just to afford a car or a motorcycle. But Richard noticed something important. His dad worked hard, not for luxury, but because cars brought him joy. And that love for cars passed straight down to Richard. Some kids grew up with toys or video games. Richard grew up in garages and car shows. One of the earliest photos of him is in a little Volkswagen Beetle pedal car, smiling like he already knew where his life was headed. By the time Richard turned 14, he wasn't just daydreaming about cars, he was already buying them. His very first set of wheels was a green 1974 Mercury Comet, a car he paid for with money he earned delivering newspapers and hustling to find good deals. Not long after, he added 2 more cars to his name. So by the time he reached his senior year of high school, he had already owned 3 cars. For most teenagers, a car was just a ride to school or a way to get to parties. But for Richard, those cars were something bigger. They were the first steps toward the life he was destined to build. But passion alone doesn't pay the bills. After graduating from Eastern Hills High School, Richard had to work hard. He jumped into some of the toughest jobs out there. He became a firefighter, running into burning buildings to save lives. Then he worked as a police officer, putting himself in danger to protect his community. And on top of that, he trained as a paramedic, dealing with emergencies most people would never want to face. These jobs shaped him. They taught him bravery, discipline, and how to stay calm in chaos. But they also carried risks. One night, when a thief tried to steal his car, Richard fought back and got shot. The bullet wound left a scar, but it also left a lesson. Richard Rawlings was willing to risk it all to protect the things he loved. Still, deep down, he knew those careers weren't the end game. He didn't dream of being behind a badge or carrying medical gear. His true love was still in the garage, with grease-stained hands, engines roaring, and wrenches turning. By the late 90s, Richard knew he needed money to chase his dream. Cars cost cash, lots of it. So in 1999, he made a bold move. He launched a printing and advertising company called Lincoln Press. At first, it didn't look like the kind of business a future car mogul would run. Printing flyers and making ads wasn't glamorous, but Richard was playing the long game. He knew if he wanted to build something massive, he first needed a financial foundation. And that's exactly what Lincoln Press gave him. Over the next few years, he poured his energy into growing the company. He sharpened his skills as a businessman, learned how to market himself, and built connections. By 2004, Lincoln Press was thriving. And when Richard sold it, he suddenly had what he needed most: capital. Money that could finally fuel the dream he'd been chasing since he was a kid. And that's when Richard Rawlings went all in on cars. But how did that passion turn into a global brand? How did the Gas Monkey Garage come to life? The birth of Gas Monkey Garage. In 2002, even before selling Lincoln Press, Richard Rawlings officially opened Gas Monkey Garage in Dallas, Texas. His idea was simple yet powerful. Build and customize classic cars and hot rods for customers all around the world. It wasn't just about fixing cars. It was about creating something unique, something that carried attitude, style, and a little bit of rebellion. Gas Monkey Garage quickly developed its own identity, loud, bold, and full of energy, much like Richard himself. At first, the garage was nothing more than a small workshop, but in no time, word began to spread. Customers loved the cars, loved the creativity, and loved the energy of the place. Gas Monkey wasn't just a business anymore, it was becoming a brand. Richard wasn't content with staying small. He wanted attention, big attention. And in May 2007, he got just that. Together with his co-pilot and longtime friend, Dennis Collins, Richard set out to do something outrageous. They aimed to break the Cannonball Run record, a coast-to-coast drive from New York City to Los Angeles that had become a legend in car culture. The original 1979 record stood at 32 hours and 51 minutes, set by Dave Hines and Dave Yarborough in a Jaguar XJS. Richard and Dennis entered with a black Ferrari 550 Maranello, modified with extra fuel tanks so they could drive longer without stopping. The two bet rival Jay Riecke that they could beat the old time. Their final run clocked in at 31 hours and 59 minutes, shaving nearly an hour off the record. Of course, the attempt was surrounded by controversy. Many questioned whether the start and end points matched the original Cannonball rules, and debates still swirl to this day. But one thing was certain, Richard Rawlings and Gas Monkey Garage had just made a lot of noise. And noise was exactly what Richard was aiming for. The real game changer came in 2012. That year, the Discovery Channel launched a brand new show, Fast and Loud. The cameras followed Richard and his crew at Gas Monkey Garage as they hunted down forgotten cars, brought them back to life, and flipped them for a profit. It wasn't staged glitz and glamour. It was raw, risky, and real. There were deadlines, drama, and plenty of personality. Viewers loved it. From the very first season, the show caught fire. Richard's energy and bold attitude, combined with the mechanical talent of his team, made for perfect TV. And the stakes were always high. Would the cars get done on time? Would they sell for a profit? Or would everything crash and burn? That tension kept audiences hooked. The very first car restored for the show was a 1931 Ford Model A. Richard had just 5 days to get it ready for filming. That car wasn't just another build, it became a symbol of the show's scrappy beginnings and eventually returned to the shop as a keepsake of where it all started. From there, the flips only got bigger. One of the most iconic was a 1968 Ford F-100 pickup truck. Richard bought it for $2,500, poured time and money into upgrading it with a modern engine, suspension, and slick paint job, and then sold it at auction for $50,000. That single deal brought in a profit of $18,000 and proved Gas Monkey wasn't just about flashy builds. It was smart business. For 8 solid years, from 2012 to 2020, Fast and Loud wasn't just a TV show, it was a worldwide sensation. The series was translated into more than 27 languages and broadcast across dozens of countries, making Richard Rawlings and Gas Monkey Garage household names far beyond Texas. Over the course of 16 seasons and 160 episodes, viewers everywhere tuned in to watch the drama, the builds, and the flips. Gas Monkey Garage had grown from a local shop into a true cultural phenomenon. Richard's real genius wasn't just in restoring cars, it was in building a brand. Behind the cameras, he was constantly making business moves, turning Gas Monkey into more than just a TV garage. In September 2013, Richard launched the Gas Monkey Bar and Grill in Northwest Dallas. It wasn't just a restaurant, it was an extension of the Gas Monkey lifestyle. Loud music, strong drinks, and a vibe that matched the garage's wild spirit. In March 2014, he took it further and opened a second location at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. That was a masterstroke. With millions of travelers passing through the terminal, Gas Monkey suddenly had global exposure. Even people who had never seen Fast and Loud were now eating, drinking, and experiencing the brand. And Richard wasn't done. Later that year, he opened Gas Monkey Live, a massive 38,000 square foot concert venue across from the bar and grill. It could hold up to 3,000 people, and on opening night, punk legends Social Distortion lit up the stage. But the biggest moment came in November 2014, when Motley Crue performed a private farewell concert there. The event, called Dodge Rock's Gas Monkey, was part car show, part rock show, and all attitude. Only Dodge vehicle owners could attend, and Dodge used the night to unveil their new Hellcat model. It was the perfect fusion of Richard's passions, cars, music, and big events. The venue became a hotspot for concerts and private parties. But when the 2020 pandemic hit, Gas Monkey Live couldn't survive the financial pressure. It closed in May 2020, marking the end of an era. Still, Richard didn't see it as a failure. It was just a pivot point. Richard's partnership with Dodge in 2014 had already made him a national spokesperson, with commercials that brought Gas Monkey energy to millions of homes. And in 2016, he launched another bold venture, Richard Rawlings Garage, a restaurant in Harker Heights, Texas. Though it closed in 2019, it showed his willingness to experiment and expand. Then came another move, Gas Monkey Energy Drinks. In 2019, instead of starting from scratch, Richard licensed the brand. That way, he could focus on growth without worrying about production headaches. The first two flavors, regular and light, were marketed as high-energy, high-performance drinks that matched the Gas Monkey lifestyle. By January 2025, a third flavor had been added, a tropical mix of mango, pineapple, passion fruit, lemon, and honey. No high-fructose syrup, no artificial additives, just clean energy that fit perfectly with racing events, car shows, and everyday life. You could find Gas Monkey Energy at convenience stores, the Indy 500, NHRA drag races, and more. It wasn't just a drink, it was brand synergy at its finest. Richard's influence stretched even further. He co-hosted another Discovery Channel series called Garage Rehab. But this time, it wasn't about flipping cars. Instead, Richard and his co-hosts Russell Holmes and Chris Stevens focused on saving failing automotive shops. The idea was simple: take struggling garages, invest in them, fix them up, and turn them into profitable businesses. Richard wasn't just a car guy anymore. He was a mentor, using his own business skills to help others chase their automotive dreams. It was proof of how far he'd come, from a kid in Texas buying a Mercury Comet at 14 to a leader who could inspire and lift up others. By the time Fast and Loud ended in 2020, Richard had already built something bigger than TV fame. He had created a brand empire. Gas Monkey was everywhere, on cars, on restaurants, in music venues, in energy drinks, even on merchandise. Richard Rawlings had become more than a car builder. He was an entrepreneur, a showman, and a cultural icon. But while his business world thrived, his personal life told a different story, one filled with challenges, setbacks, and lessons learned. His personal life. Let's rewind to the early 90s, long before a Gas Monkey Garage became a household name. In 1993, Richard Rawlings took a big step in his personal life. He married Karen K. Grames. At the time, Richard wasn't the TV star we know today. He was just a young man with big dreams, working hard and trying to find his way. The marriage, however, didn't last long. After only a year, the two quietly went their separate ways. There were no scandals, no headlines. It was simply the end of a chapter before the real story even began. Life never slowed down for Richard, and by 1999, big changes were already unfolding. That was the year he kicked off Lincoln Press, but it was also the year love found its way back into his story. Richard married his second wife, Suzanne Marie Mergel, in Las Vegas, Nevada. The wedding was bold, spontaneous, and full of energy, very much in Richard's style. At first, it seemed like everything was falling into place. His career was slowly gaining momentum, and he had a partner by his side as he chased his dreams. But as time went on, the pressure of building businesses and chasing success began to take its toll. By 2009, after 10 years of marriage, Richard and Suzanne decided to part ways. It could have ended there, just another failed Hollywood-style marriage. But Richard and Suzanne's story had a surprising twist. 6 years after their divorce in 2015, the couple shocked everyone by rekindling their romance. They didn't just get back together quietly, they remarried in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. The setting was breathtaking, the ceremony intimate, and it looked like love had finally found its way back. For fans and friends, it felt like a fairy tale comeback. Richard had the booming success of Fast and Loud, and now he had Suzanne back in his life. For a moment, everything seemed perfect. But sometimes, even second chances aren't enough. In March 2019, Richard took to Twitter to share news that would catch fans off guard. He announced that he and Suzanne were separating once again. What made this moment stand out wasn't just the breakup itself, it was how Richard handled it. With the media already circling, he decided to take control of the story. In his own words, he explained that the split was mutual and respectful. After so many years together on and off, they both knew it was finally time to close the book for good. The divorce settlement reflected this sense of closure. Suzanne walked away with a payout of $300,000, split into 2 installments, and she also kept her sleek Mercedes SL 450 Roadster. Richard, on the other hand, kept moving forward. He spoke openly about respecting the memories they had shared and seemed determined to face the next chapter of his life with the same resilience that made him a success in the car world. Still, as polished as Richard's public words were, there's no doubt that this second divorce hit hard. After all, Suzanne wasn't just a passing relationship. She had been with him through some of his biggest ups and downs, from the building of his businesses to the height of his fame on Fast and Loud. Their story stretched across 2 decades, a mix of love, loss, reunion, and heartbreak. And that's what makes Richard Rawlings' personal journey so fascinating. On the outside, he was the confident TV star, the deal maker, the man who could turn rust into gold. But behind the cameras, he was also someone searching for lasting love, someone willing to take risks, not just with cars and businesses, but with his heart. Richard's marriages remind us that even the people who seem unstoppable have their struggles. Relationships are hard work, and fame doesn't make them easier. If anything, the spotlight only magnifies the cracks. Yet through it all, Richard kept his head high, refusing to let personal setbacks break him. He approached love the same way he approached his garage, with passion, boldness, and the belief that even if things fall apart, you can always rebuild. Gas Monkey Garage may have turned Richard Rawlings into a household name, but his rocky love life revealed a whole different side of the man behind the wheel. It's a reminder that no matter how fast you race, life has a way of keeping you grounded. And it wasn't just his personal relationships hitting bumps in the road. Richard also found himself caught up in legal battles. But what kind of legal trouble did he face? Legal troubles. Some of Richard's biggest high-road bumps came in the form of legal battles. One of the most headline-grabbing disputes involved the Gas Monkey Bar and Grill. On the surface, it looked like the perfect extension of his brand: cars, food, music, and a place where the Gas Monkey lifestyle came alive. But behind the scenes, things weren't running as smoothly as a freshly tuned engine. The bar filed a lawsuit against Rawlings, accusing him of defamation and breach of contract. They claimed Richard had made slanderous remarks about them, accused the management of being dishonest, even of stealing, and interfered with their business operations. The damages they were seeking? A whopping $6 million. For most people, that kind of lawsuit could have been devastating. But Richard Rawlings isn't most people. He fired back with a countersuit, claiming that the bar was actually using his brand without proper authorization. According to him, they owed him unpaid licensing fees and were dragging the Gas Monkey name through the mud. At the heart of this messy conflict was one thing: control of the brand. Richard built Gas Monkey from nothing, and he wasn't about to let anyone misuse his name or water down what it stood for. On the flip side, the bar's management claimed that Richard was interfering too much with their operations, even though he wasn't directly involved in running the place day to day. They even accused him of sabotaging a deal with a potential buyer by making negative comments about the bar. It was the kind of drama that seemed almost scripted for reality TV, but this was very real. The back and forth dragged on until finally both sides reached a settlement. The lawsuits were dropped, the Gas Monkey name was no longer tied to the bar, and the venue eventually rebranded itself as Amplified. Now, you'd think a battle like that might slow Richard down. But the thing about him is no matter what obstacle comes his way, he keeps moving. While the courtroom drama played out, Richard was already on to his next big idea: Monkey Trap, his podcast. Unlike TV, where things are edited and polished, Monkey Trap gave fans Rawlings unfiltered. He'd bring on fascinating guests like Hollywood stuntman Cord Newman, the guy behind some of the craziest stunts in film. They'd swap wild stories, talk cars, talk life, and give fans a behind-the-scenes look at worlds most people never get to experience. For Richard, the podcast wasn't just about entertainment. It was about rebuilding his connection with his audience and showing that he wasn't just the Gas Monkey guy on TV, he was the real deal. But Richard's reinvention didn't stop with a podcast. In 2023, he made a bold move. He sold off nearly 30 cars from his private collection. These weren't just any cars either. We're talking everything from Superbirds and 426 Hemis to custom Model A hot rods and even quirky little BMW Isettas. His reasoning? He wanted to make room for something bigger. That auction brought in over $1.8 million, with some standouts grabbing serious attention. A pristine 1993 Toyota Supra sold for an eye-popping $121,000. A 62 Corvette and a custom 65 Mustang turned heads as well. But Richard wasn't just cashing in, he was changing lanes. As he put it, he was done with beer budget builds and ready to focus on the world of luxury supercars. And he meant it. By early 2024, Rawlings had already invested over $1 million into rebuilding his dream collection. But this time, it wasn't all about American muscle. His new collection had a distinctly European edge: Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and vintage Porsches. During a trip to Ireland, he did something that had fans buzzing for months. He bought 5 Ferrari Testarossas. One of them had even been converted into an electric vehicle, a mix of old-school style and modern technology that drew attention when it appeared at SEMA 2023. This was Richard Rawlings 2.0, no longer just the hot rod guy from Texas, but a global car collector with an eye on the future. And while he was reimagining his garage, his business empire kept expanding. Gas Monkey energy drinks hit the market, Branded apparel continued to sell worldwide, and licensing deals kept pumping money into the empire he had built. It's almost poetic when you think about it. The guy who once sweated it out in a small Dallas garage with no air conditioning now hops on private jets, traveling the world to chase rare supercars. The lawsuits, the breakups, the struggles, they weren't endings, just chapters in a much bigger journey. A journey built on reinvention, grit, and non-stop ambition. And through it all, Richard Rawlings managed to stack up an impressive fortune. But just how much is he really worth? His net worth. Richard Rawlings is living proof that turning passion into business can pay off big time. Years ago, his net worth hovered around $15 million, but that number has climbed thanks to smart investments, TV earnings, and branching out into new businesses. Today, in 2025, his fortune is estimated between $20 and $25 million, with some projections saying it could even hit $35 million in the next few years, especially with his growing YouTube channel and digital ventures. But the numbers only tell part of the story. Richard owns several properties across Texas, including a multi-million-dollar Dallas mansion with custom garages, vintage cars on display, and even his own private collection. Beyond Texas, he has real estate in Los Angeles and even a luxury retreat in Mexico, pushing his total asset value past $30 million. His garage is nothing short of a dream. Inside are luxury rides like a Ferrari 458 Italia, a Rolls-Royce Wraith, and several rare American muscle cars, together worth more than $4 million. Add to that his love for fine watches, pieces from Rolex, Audemars Piguet, and Hublot, some valued at over 6 figures each, and you start to see the full picture of his lifestyle. And he doesn't just drive in style, he flies that way too. Richard is known to charter or use private jets for travel between his businesses. From a Dallas paperboy to a global brand, Richard Rawlings built his fortune with grit, vision, and relentless drive. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.